This is Aesthetically Trained, the podcast. Pushing you to year-on-year progression. With your host, Ross McKinley.
Yo, Ross McKinley, Aesthetically Trained, the podcast, episode 30. 12 episodes. And today, a very special guest, a mentor of mine, good friend. I call everyone a good friend, but it's because I'd like to think that they are. Jonny, Propane Fitness, Powerlifting. Welcome.
Powerlifting.
Powerlifting. I know we're going to talk about a lot today. I'm bigging everyone up from the start for your numbers, but I don't want you to get too much pressure. So tell everyone about you, Jonny.
I don't do all the pressure. Thanks for having me, firstly. I can't help but notice that I was after Yusuf, but you know, I'll not take it personally. I am one half of propanefitness.com. So if you've listened to the previous episode with Yusuf, I'm his business partner. I'm also an accountant, believe it or not. So I left uni, did accountancy, quit that, thought I'm going to do online personal training instead, because that's the logical career progression. Since that, we teach other PTs to do the same thing. So I've been running Propane Fitness for 10 years, doing online fitness coaching. And I do some powerlifting as well, or I used to do some powerlifting. Still lift relatively heavy things, but I used to compete in powerlifting nationally and internationally as well.
Yeah. When I think of you, as I so irrelevantly blurted out at the beginning there, I do actually think of powerlifting. I think very clever. For some reason, I think about finances. I don't know why. I feel like you're very organised in that regard whenever I've spoke to you. Powerlifting. I also think, and we're going to touch on it, of sumo deadlifts, which, you know, again, like, but they're, when I think of you, Jonny, that's what comes to mind. So there we go.
Things.
Yeah.
I'll take that. None of them are bad, in my opinion, anyway.
For everyone listening, as I touched on there, the first thing, and I mentioned this to Yusuf as well, when I even mentioned the word of powerlifting, it's very different to what I do with Aesthetically Trained. Obviously, I'm focused on aesthetics, getting people shredded, abs, you know, you're not quite bodybuilding, but natural bodybuilding to get in the best shape possible. Powerlifting, much more strength feats across your three main lifts. But the one thing that will immediately have come into everyone's mind is how much do you weigh and what are your all-time PBs? So go on, tell me.
What a personal question.
It's how big is it?
So my all-time PBs. So people get, if you talk about this in the powerlifting community, people get really uptight about it because you're not allowed to say a PB number that wasn't done in a competition. But I used to compete in the 93 kilo weight class, so you could weigh anything over 83 and anything under 93. Yeah. And I then moved up in the 105 weight class because I couldn't keep my weight that low. So the all-time weights, the heaviest weights that I've ever lifted on squat, bench, deadlift are 250 kilo squat, 162.5 kilo bench, 312.5 kilo deadlift. None of those are in competition though, which is why people get really upset about it. So
that's still big.
They felt really difficult at the time. I'll be honest. It did feel heavy. Basically, I still kind of train that way, but I don't compete anymore. Mainly just because of injuries. To be honest, it's like as you're on that journey to like add more and more weight to the bar, eventually stuff starts giving. Like you get tweaks, pulls, the same injuries recur.
I think the fear of progressive overload. The fear of progressive overload each week, almost you hit a PB one week and in your head you're really happy, but then in the back of your mind you go, and this means at some point you're going to have to try to beat this number.
Exactly. Exactly.
So the reason I wanted to start with that was we've got our main questions which we're going to get into in a minute, but I think it helps, and with Yusuf as well, you've got the whole doctor thing with you, your credentials if you like, your accountant, but then also the strength numbers, as well as now your Propane Fitness, which is the coaching side of things, but also the business side of things for PT. So what I'm saying in a roundabout way is that you know what you're on about, whether it comes to training yourself or with your clients, and the back end and the business side of things. So it's going to be worth listening to you. So to start, we're going to start with something that I thought would be a little bit different question. I don't think I've asked anyone anything down this route before, and it's not something that's relevant to me, kind of with the lads out with maybes, but being in a team. So a lot of the people listening might be working with teams at work, whether it's their boss, whether it's actually their business. But one of the things that impressed me about you and Yusuf is that you seem to really complement each other. And obviously Propane's a massive business, both the fitness and the business side. So how did you get into is a partnership? Because I imagine you don't actually work. I don't know. I don't imagine that you tell many PTs to go into a partnership for coaching online and for what you're doing. So how did that come about? And so what were your tips for it be in a more general sense of people at work and also in the personal training industry?
Yeah, that is a good question. The partnership. So me and Yusuf working together. I don't have like a. I wish I could say that it was like a. We did it on purpose and we picked each other to complement our weaknesses and strengths and all that sort of stuff. The truth of it is we're at school together, and we went in the gym. We were in the gym at the same time. So like I can remember the first time I ever like one of us snuck a tub of creatine into school, and it was like fuck, he's got creatine. And then we tried our first creatine together for the first time and like went through that journey together. And that just inevitably led to our. So we read like T Nation and bodybuilding.com. I don't know whether your listeners will have heard of that. Yeah, like the original stuff.
Yeah.
We're like, well, how hard can that be? Why don't we just set up a website? And that's literally how it started. So it just so happened that the stuff that Yusuf's very good at naturally is a weakness for me. And I don't want to say Yusuf's bad at the stuff that I do, but I think we naturally have like strengths and weaknesses.
You do for sure complement each other, for sure.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people say that, which is honestly total fluke. But in terms of being in a partnership, I think someone pointed out to me like loads of people get married and aren't with their partner for as long as me and Yusuf have been in a business relationship for been running Propane Business and Propane Fitness since like 2009 to now. It's a long time. And the thing that I think we've just got really good at is it is separate. So like tonight, for example, I'm going for dinner with Yusuf and one other guy as just as friends, and we won't talk about business, and it's all completely separate. But at work, it's work. So I can say stuff to him in a business context. I know he won't take it personally, and like we just treat it as separate stuff. So it's almost like two separate people. That and Yusuf especially is very good at. I mean, you've probably seen this from his content and stuff like that. But he does a lot of meditation. He does a lot of like self-development. He doesn't have much of an ego, so he's not attached to ideas. He's not attached to it's my way or everyone else is wrong. So I think that stuff's allowed us to work together. In terms of we do have people join and work with us who are either in a partnership or think like, should I join a partnership? And I think the advice we generally give is just be really clear on why you want that other person to be in the business with you, because like you'll know this, Ross, like working for yourself is like scary, right? It's like you have bad days and you're on your own, or like clients cancel, people complain, and you just sat on your laptop. It's the thought of having a business partner is nice, but you've got to fast forward like 5 years in the future. Like imagine that business is really successful. You've then got all the complexities that come with that. Like money brings out weird stuff in people.
For sure.
So I would say like you just want to be really clear on why. Like if you're going to work with someone, like what can they bring that I can't do, or what are they going to do instead? Like what are their roles versus my roles? How are we going to balance this? Don't just like go into business with your friends because it sounds like a good idea. Because I think more often than not, I think Yusuf and I are lucky ultimately that combination happens to work, but more often than not, I don't think it does. Especially if you're mates, like before you go into business and then you set something up together.
Yeah, I was very fortunate. I think that the way that, and now with Lee and Connor, who helped me, as everyone knows, they were obviously two of my close friends. Connor worked in the gym with us. Lee's like my big brother, taught us to cook when I was younger, and they've kind of seen my journey and seen us build aesthetically trained, if you like. But the big thing with them, and actually something I had to get over, was that, and this sounds horrendous, but I think it probably shows how much I've changed in myself as well. When I was younger, I used to kind of think that everyone thought like me. So I used to remember, like, I'd be at the gym and I'd be like, well, there's no way he'll work for me because he'll be thinking he could do it himself for more money. Like that would be like my kind of attitude, because when I was at my gym, that was my attitude. I used to like think, fucking hell, I'm doing all the sign-ups here. Like I'm signing everyone up in the gym. I could just have my own gym. Oh, I'm signing everyone up for transformations, taking a small cut of it. I could be doing the whole thing. When actually what you realize is that like not everyone wants to be the business owner, not everyone wants to take that risk. And some people actually are really happy helping you on the journey. And since Lee and Connor have worked for me now for 2 years, and it's been fantastic. And I think there has been times, like you said, where I need to speak to them just as business and keep it separate from friends. But it's really helped. my business. So I would certainly recommend everyone, but that, you know, like you said there, having sort of clear boundaries and clear responsibilities definitely helps.
Definitely. Yeah.
The next one is more specific to you personally. I think this will help a lot of people. Now, I talked to Yusuf last week. He is the king, I said, of learning. You're both, in the nicest possible way, fucking nerds, but you're everything that I'm not, and I love it. I feel like we'd probably have a great night out together. I can't imagine you would be able to keep up with shots, but I'm sure facts would hold us back, and you'd keep us very entertained in that sense. But both of you are incredibly clever, right? And I mean that in the best possible way. But you're also very different. And I kind of had Yusuf down as almost like learning weird shit and just like this ability to learn stuff. And I've got you down. I've literally put like productivity, organization, like, and just getting the most out of like whatever it is that you're doing. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, I think so. It's interesting because I agree with you about Yusuf learning weird shit. Like he knows some weird shit. He's more into the productivity stuff than me, weirdly. A lot of the productivity stuff that I do is from him.
Yeah.
But I absolutely obsess over like it's happened like multiple times throughout my life. So initially it was like I want to get really lean for the first time.
Yep.
And then I obsessed about all the numbers with that and all the details of it. And I wanted to learn everything about it. Yeah. Like I don't ever approach anything from like feel. It's all like,
I feel like you're more targeted. I feel like you've got a little bit more laser focus in you from my time. And I know the two of you pretty well, not great, but I know you pretty well. So I made a couple of notes. The one thing I want to ask you was on that sort of organizer and rituals, what your tips would be. And I noted down a couple of things that I know of you, again, little things. Yusuf mentioned that you have an offline day, which I think will be interesting for you to talk about. And I remember, and you're correct or wrong, about coffee. For some reason, I wrote down asking about your coffee routine because you really like coffee. I don't know where I've heard that or remember it from. Maybe it's one of your earlier podcasts or something that I'd read, but both. So talk to us about your routine, Jonny, and your rituals and how normal people, if you like, can get some of your organization.
Okay. So I think that the main way that Yusuf and I differ on this stuff, and probably my biggest tip, is I spend more time thinking about what I'm going to do than just how I do it. So Yusuf's very tuned in to like how fast he can load something on his laptop, and he's got all these keyboard shortcuts and all sort of stuff. I'm not very good at that, but I will spend like an hour thinking like, what's the most important thing? And there's a quote that we read on our podcast the other day of saying like, if you just randomly pick from a list of 10 things, one thing to do, you have a 10% chance of that being the most important use of your time, versus like if you spend a bit of time picking it out and weighing everything up, that would be, you've got a much higher chance of getting it right. So I think the most important thing like two habits. One of them is have an inbox process, which Yusuf might have said when you asked him this question.
No, well, the different questions. So you've not had the same questions. We've kept it fresh.
Okay. So an inbox process is something that's in a book called Getting Things Done by David Allen. It's like really famous productivity book. Yeah. The idea that like everything that occurs to you, every email you get, every to-do, put that in some kind of system. Like a to-do list app. It can be anything. It can be a bit of paper. And then the second tip is have one day of the week where you review that. So you look at all of it and you think like, do I still want to do this? Should this be on the list at all? What's the most important thing I could do next week? And you can only ever really do that when you're looking at everything. So when you have a list of all the stuff you could do and you pick one thing out, you then feel comfortable with everything that's on the list that you're not now doing. So that's like, I would say that of all the stuff I do, like the offline day is just a way for me to ensure that I have a day in the week where I can do that one thing, right? Because as soon as you turn on your internet, and I'm not offline in the strictest sense, like I don't go out into the middle of nowhere and have no internet connection. I still need the internet to do what I'm doing, but I'm not like checking emails, replying to stuff, speaking to clients, doing any of that stuff. It's all just that one task to move stuff forward.
Are you on your phone at all that day?
I'd love to say no, not at all, but I will check it. But taking, if I'm going to sit down and do like an hour or two of work, phone's not even in the room generally. Really? So I use something called cold turkey on my laptop, which blocks, we've probably spoken about that before, like stops you from being able to open your email, check social media. And then I just leave my phone downstairs and I can't even allow myself to pick it up. yeah, that it's really simple. There's the difficulty with stuff like this is it's often like the simple advice that's just actually really difficult to do consistently because it's boring and hard and there's like no reward attached to it immediately. That's the stuff that makes a big difference. Whereas like people, I think, focus on the apps and the tactics and the hacks, and that stuff doesn't really help, I find. So, what was your second question about coffee?
Well, I just remember, and I can't remember whether it is from like the wormhole of years of probably listening ears or whatever it is, but I just remember something about you and coffee, like whether it is that you really had a really refined process for coffee in the morning, for the timing of coffee. Everyone that listens to this will drink coffee, no doubt. But I have a lot of clients that maybe certainly initially say like, oh, I'm drinking like 3-4 cups of coffee a day. When's the best time to drink coffee? So just as a real beginner's guide to coffee, I thought, do you know what? I've not asked anyone that's been on before, and I'm sure that you will give me a load of random facts. So coffee, when's best to have it? What are you doing? How do we utilize it? Go. Something different.
Okay. So I guess it depends like what you want out of it. Like I just really like coffee. I don't really care about the supplement benefits of it. Like it helps, obviously, like it's a pretty potent drug, caffeine, but if you think like, ooh, I'd quite like to get in a coffee, but I don't really know where to start, I would get an AeroPress. So you can get them on Amazon. They're like 30 quid, 20 quid.
Yeah.
They're made by the same guy who makes Aerobi Frisbees. You know, the Frisbees with the hole in the middle that go miles. So he makes them and an AeroPress, which is basically, it's like a bit of plastic. It's like a piston that creates a certain amount of pressure for coffee. And some kind of grinder. So not the app grinder, some kind of like coffee bean grinder to take like buy whatever beans you want, like buy whole beans from the shop, grind them in the grinder, put that in the AeroPress with water that isn't boiling. It's like just something that isn't boiling hot.
I can tell that you really want to tell with the exact degrees there. Like you really know for sure. Like I should tell them that it's, but I don't want to come across like I know about too much about it. I'm
trying to give you the quick and dirty, like how do you go from, you want to graduate from Nescafe to like nice cup of coffee, but you don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
That's the cheat sheet. But I think I've tried every method of making coffee, which is quite sad.
I think I've heard this before. Where I got it from, I think it must have been on like Life Hacks or something when you've done that with Chris Williamson or when you've done it with you and Yusuf. And I've definitely heard it and just I'd made some notes. So I always do with people coming on, just random stuff to ask them. And I was like, definitely ask about coffee. Would you say, Jonny, with coffee, do you use coffee as a I know you mentioned there briefly. Do you use it as a pre-workout, or would you use a specific pre-workout for before you train?
I don't actually use anything like that. I train in the evenings usually, so I'll try and only have 2 coffees a day. Not because that's like a magical number, but I literally just find that when I have a third one, I stay up later, so I don't get 8 hours of sleep. So I have 2 coffees a day, usually pre 10 a.m. So it's all out my system by the time I train in the evening. I'd love to have a pre-workout. Like I would love to slam loads of coffee or have loads of caffeine pre-training because I'd probably have a better training session, but I wouldn't be in bed till 3 a.m. So all I have is like Chris Williamson's obsessed with this. It's called Clear Whey from my protein. It's like it turns into almost like a juice. It's just protein powder, but it tastes like orange juice instead of like a milky drink. So I just drink that when I train, but no caffeine.
Perfect. Awesome. Good. Right. The last question, and this is more specific to your powerlifting and kind of like your life in general. So you've went from accountant to then into Propane Fitness and business now. But alongside that, the whole way, and something I'm sure you've heard your clients say before, and I know that I have when people are applying to work with us, is like, I'm going to wait until I've finished this stage of the business, or I'm going to wait until I've finished this qualification to get started when it comes to their fitness. And yet you've managed to build effectively 2 businesses, be an accountant, and hit some ridiculous powerlifting numbers. How did you do it all? And what would your advice be for people that are maybe juggling a career and fitness goals?
That's a good question. I think certainly while I was an accountant, like fitness was my it was my hobby, like my escape from it. So I never really struggled to do it. But I think the key thing really is if you have a bit of momentum behind you. So like, why was I able to stick to it? Well, I could see myself getting stronger. I did powerlifting competitions and I did quite well in them. I got picked for the British team. Like all those things happened. It's very, very hard when you've got that momentum behind you to go like, you know what, I can't be bothered anymore, because you've got this bigger thing pushing you. And I think we see this with clients where if they can just get over that initial resistance of like, yeah, but this is really difficult, and you get like 6 weeks in and you've lost a bit of weight, and people start mentioning it at work, you're not going to skip gym sessions, right? Like that's the momentum you need to keep going. So I think I was quite lucky in the sense that I had a bit of that from uni. So I came out of uni and started work with fitness already kind of being something I did. And people would already say like, oh, you're looking leaner, or you're looking bigger, or I saw that PB you did on Facebook or whatever.
Yeah.
And that just kept it going. So fitness has just been always something I do. I've probably struggled to train more over the last like 2-3 years of my life than ever before since I stopped competing. And just because like, as I think as your business grows and you start hiring a team and you're the boss, it's even harder to pull yourself away. I think that's the thing I've found, ironically. But you've just got to, I think, having some momentum behind you. So commit to 6 weeks or commit to 12 weeks and just let it prove it, let like the results prove it to you. And then just use a calendar, as basic as it is. Like you have the time, realistically. At least like most people have the time to do something that's efficient and like well structured. The reason that people don't do it a lot of the time is because either they think it takes more time than it needs to, or they think it will be harder than it actually is to do.
Yeah.
So if you can kind of break down those beliefs, then I think most people can find something to do in the week to get some momentum behind them.
Did you schedule in, or have you always scheduled in specific training times so it's in your diary, so you're kind of prioritizing it? Like, would that be one of your suggestions?
Certainly now I do, yeah. So Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, every week without fail. And I just have this like thing in my mind of, I know if it'll get to the end of Thursday and I'll be like, oh, I've got stuff to do. I'll train tomorrow. But I've had so many experiences of that thought pattern just being bullshit and it not happening that I'm like, I just need to train tonight. Like I'll do the work tomorrow instead. And then when I was working full-time job, without the flexibility of my own schedule, it just had to be in the morning. So I knew I had to train at 6 a.m. If I didn't train at 6 a.m., it didn't happen a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And it's pretty brutal, to be honest. Yeah. Like
find the time and commit to it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Good. Would you say with that, just to finish off as well, with you being busier? Now, my opinion with it and what I've heard from a lot of people before, and I understand this, and you've probably got this now with you being the business growing, is when you have your own business, when you're getting more responsibility at work, you sometimes frame it as like, you know, it's your business. No one will ever say it to you, or no one will ever have a go at you for kind of choosing your business over your health. I don't think everyone's always like, oh, well, you've got to do your work, or like, you've got to, oh yeah, that's fair enough, you're busy with work. Like, if you go, oh, I've had a busy week with work, so I didn't train, people go, oh, fair enough, work must be going well. Like, no one ever questions that. Like, no one ever goes like, oh, like, why did you not just still go to the gym? And I think for a lot of people, it's that it's almost like a little bit of guilt in that, like, the hour in front of them, they think that they could be earning money, they could be coming up with solutions for their employees, coming up with, you know, earning for their family if they like. So to do something for themselves is maybe, I don't know, feels like a little bit self-indulgent, but ultimately looking after your health and your physique will repay you in the long run, right? Is that something that you've kind of felt sometimes, that you're kind of battling with that thought, if you like?
Is this for business owners, or for? I
guess for business owners, and even for like when people have like impending deadlines at work. I know some of the lads that I work with in some industries sort of have like sales targets, or, you know, sort of sign up targets in recruitment and stuff. And at the end of the month, sometimes they'll be maybe a little bit more stressed, a little bit more pressured into maybe potentially missing sessions or getting a deal over the line. Would you say then maybe find a way? Would you revisit that thought and say, look, the benefit is to keep a consistent routine? Do you drop down to a minimum? What would you say to yourself, or well, obviously to the people listening and watching then?
So if it's a business owner, what I try and remind myself of when I fall into that thought pattern of like, oh, I need to skip training today, is just like that hour of time is not going to be the thing that like turns the month into a bigger month, or the year into a bigger year. Like, if anything, it's the opposite. Like, if I just keep working, then my focus tomorrow and the next day will be lower. Like, my output will be lower. And And it's also like a bit of a sign if you're a business owner and you can't take like 3 or 4 hours a week out of your week to train. Like that's not really a business. Like that's more of a warning sign. It's an alarm going off saying like there's something wrong here, rather than that's part of it. Because I think I define something becomes a business when it could run without you. Like when you could still get the results, still generate the revenue without you actually being there. Now that exists without you, it's a business rather than a job. If you're working for someone, it's a little bit different because obviously you're paid for a certain outcome or a certain amount of hours per week. I think I'm always very aware of like how many hours of actual work I can do in a day. I think it's a lot less than people think it is. Like if you count the amount of hours you do without distraction, without going on Facebook, like with actually sat focused work, like I'd be very impressed if it's more than 4 or 5 hours spread out throughout the day. So if you look at that, you say, well, so many people spend 10 hours at a desk. It's like, what are they doing for the rest of the time? Right? If you really add it up, it's like chatting with people, checking email, procrastinating. So like there's a load of waste in most people's schedule that you could swap for 45 minutes in the gym if you wanted to. So
the task expands to fit the time. I think that's always a good thing. I think it was one of our mutual friends, Paul, used to say that was when he used to him, that the task expands to fit the time. If you're not using your diary, which we both mentioned, and you've not got clear deadlines throughout your day for the tasks, whether it's for yourself or at your work, sometimes it's just like something that takes you 30 minutes will take you the full morning because you have the full morning. One thing that I do, and anyone that knows me, although I was on time today, Jonny, we must admit I was bang on time today.
You were definitely
but I am fucking horrendous at timekeeping. And it comes from a place of always wanting to do more, I think. I just want to get that little bit, like, can I just do something else and procrastinate that little bit before I go and do something? Now, that's great. But what I find is that sometimes if I want to be really on point with my training, I know, and I'm busy with work or it's a launch week or whatever, like exactly what you said there, what I do, I actually try to apply a bit more pressure, and I'll try and go and train with my friends, or I'll use training to compartmentalize my day, because I actually know that if I train and I tell my friend or a client, someone, oh, come train me and I'll be there at 6 o'clock in the morning, I won't let them down. And then I'm up, and then I have to do the work afterwards because I've got up. Or equally, I'll say, look, I'll come train me and I'll be there at 4:30. Sometimes I might be a little bit late. But the idea is that I'm using these events and using training to actually create for me some structure in my day to then get the work done. Because otherwise, sometimes, like I mentioned there, I certainly think, the quality of the work is more important than the time, because it can just expand and you just sat there thinking like, fucking hell, that took us 2 hours and it should normally took us 30 minutes or whatever.
Definitely.
Yeah. So that would be my tip. Right. Are you ready for the quickfire round?
Yes, I am.
This is what everyone looks forward to and will judge you on ultimately. And, people might even ring you about this in years to come and ask why you answered certain questions certain ways. So prepare for it mentally.
Okay. All right, I'm ready.
Now, you can elaborate a little bit on some answers if you want. I am going to push you on some because there's somewhere I genuinely want to know why you do certain things or your answers.
But is it got to be quick answers?
So the first 4, right, are kind of random, a little bit aimed at you. The last 4, I ask everyone that comes on, and then they're a bit more, I wouldn't go as far as saying like they're philosophical, but they're a little bit deeper, and you can have longer to kind of think and answer. And I'll buy you some time by talking and rambling as you think as well. Okay. So, first one, right off the block, very specific to you, this one. Sumo or conventional deadlift?
Sumo.
Does sumo count?
It depends who you ask. If you ask people in the IPF, like the International Powerlifting Federation, they'd say yes. If you ask people who do CrossFit, they'd say no. But then they allow kipping pull-ups. So
to clarify, sumo deadlift is a really wide stance for everyone who hasn't done it before, and it's completely different from conventional deadlift. But I will add that as a youngster, I actually deadlifted 200, which is a big milestone for everyone. When I was like, I can't remember, it would have been like probably late teens, early 20s, and I actually done it sumo first, just completely randomly, and then that gives us the confidence to then go and do it conventional. Yeah, so it's a useful tool, but I thought that would be a good one to start. The next one, being a man of finances and also an organised bloke, spend or save?
Spend.
Oh, surprising answer there. Training, upper or lower?
Upper.
relax or work?
Work.
Yeah, that was. I
Need to
thought that
relax.
was going to be. That was the one I
Yeah.
thought you were going to go with there for sure. Right, you're in the groove now. We're happy. You're settled. You're ready for the deeper questions.
Yeah.
What is the worst place you have ever visited? Now, obviously, you're probably thinking, like, do I have any clients in any of these specific places? Am I going to offend anyone?
Do I
Like,
offend
but you've just got
anyone?
to go with what you think. You've got to go, this was the worst place. It's a dive. I'm not going back. It can be in the UK. It can be abroad. Anywhere in the world, what is the worst?
So when I was an auditor, so when I had to do like go to random companies and audit their finances,
Yeah.
I often got sent to like industrial estates and like business parks. Some of the industrial estates in Middlesbrough and Stockton are the greyest, darkest, most miserable place you'll ever go.
I think you have said the same place. I think for the first time, I've got two places back to back.
So he went to uni in Stockton. Yeah. Oh man, it is such a miserable place.
Fantastic. Right.
Yeah.
The other side of that, what is the best place you've ever been?
Probably Santorini.
Nice. It's every woman's dream that a man takes out of Santorini, isn't it? Did you take your girlfriend?
I did.
Oh, you're a good lad. That's every bloke is just like, oh, this is nice. Santorini, White Castles.
It's very, very nice. Very
Excellent.
nice place.
Brilliant. Right. This one's probably the last two a little bit deeper. So, what is the worst piece of advice you have ever been given?
Probably that, like, you have to, so like all throughout school, all throughout uni, like parents, friends, I think everybody tells you to like go a certain career path. I'm quite glad I did, but ultimately, a lot of people will tell you not to quit your job to do something else, or like not to leave that path once you're on it to do something else.
Mm-hmm.
So I think realistically, had I listened to that advice and stayed on that road, I'd have been really miserable. So yeah, like the advice to like follow the traditional route and not go after the like, yeah, but I think I'd really like to do that with my life. Like I'd really like to quit and try and make propane a thing. And everyone says you'll never turn that into anything. Like you'll never make any money doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily I didn't follow it just out of being stubborn. But
what I would say as a caveat to that, I think that's fantastic. But I think that you and Yusuf are in an even better position. To anyone that's possibly thinking about youngsters or anyone at uni or whatever on a career path, you did do it first and then decide that you're going to change, which I think, only my opinion, is completely different to doing it for a short period and dropping out before you've done it. Like,
no, you're dead right. You're dead right. Yeah. So like both Yusuf and I have like an insurance policy backup, I guess. Like,
yeah,
we have qualifications and other things if everything went tits up, like we could go and do. It's like, it's so easy, isn't it, to look back on stuff and go like, oh, I wish I'd done propane sooner or whatever. But that's probably like probably would have been a dangerous decision had it failed.
Yeah.
I guess like the advice is more aimed at if you feel like you're stuck in a route, or you work in a job that you hate and you have this like niggle of like, yeah, but I could go do that, or I could try that.
Yes.
Obviously, don't do something that's like too risky financially. That's going to like mean you lose your house or anything like that. That's not what I'm suggesting. But I don't think. I think you can try something fairly safely these days and like get a job again.
Yeah, and I think with you as well, maybe it's because you had the qualifications and you kind of almost like, not really a safety net, but kind of you had that assurance that you'd completed one thing, you'd done it to the fullest of your ability. You kind of left no stone unturned in your previous careers, if you like. Then you could go fully into the next one, knowing that like, actually, yeah, we didn't enjoy that fully, but we did give what all in terms of effort. So we know that that is a fair reflection, as opposed to like, you didn't like something, so you kind of half-arsed it, and then it didn't work out. Well, it's not going to work out if you half-arse it. You've both fully done it, and then decide to move on, which I think for me is the best way to do it.
I agree.
So yeah, fair play both of you for that. The last one. It's been great. I appreciate you coming on. It's been fantastic. The last one, no pressure. What is the best advice you've ever been given?
What a question.
Can be a quote, can be a specific moment or memory where you've learned a lesson from it, I guess, as well. So what I sometimes say to people if they're struggling, what is the best?
I mean, it's a little bit cliche, this, or it's a little bit like...
just before you go, because I know that you're probably going to think from a coaching point of view, you're going to teach other people, but not necessarily for other people, but for you.
No.
That's the thing. It's you personally,
No,
your best advice you've been given.
This is for me. So I get a lot out of, I've had a lot of benefit out of meditating throughout, especially while like running a business. I feel like there's a lot of like emotional stuff gets thrown at you, learning to cope with that better. Yusuf's advice to just stop messing around with like 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes a day trying to build a habit. Like he was just like, just do 30 minutes a day for a month and tell me you don't notice anything. Which I did notice a lot, and it's been like a lifelong habit since. So probably that, because I think like that, the effect that's had's probably impacted so many things and so many other people in ways that it would be hard to quantify. But realistically, had he not given me that advice, I would have probably given up and wouldn't have bothered.
You've surprised us there, like Jonny. I didn't see the meditating one. I know that you're into meditating, but I didn't see that as the best one. So
yeah. I think it's just like it's like the master habit, as far as I'm concerned. Like working on your mind helps you do so many other things.
Knowing you definitely have a specific course or something that you would recommend for people for that meditation. So go on, tell everyone before we go, because I knew you would.
I do. Yeah. So especially if the thought of having like a training plan really appeals to you, or you want like a system or a process, there's a guy called Shinzen Young who has two things. He has an app called Bright Mind, and he has a PDF which is available for free called 5 Ways to Know Yourself. Right. And both of those things are like a complete system where he teaches the whole thing from start to finish, which was also Yusuf's advice actually, and Chris's advice, both of them. Yeah. But yeah, so that, I'm glad I surprised you, but that's the best advice I've ever been given.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. I will put in the notes below all of your social media handles and links to Propane Business and Propane Fitness. But is there anything else that you want to sort of finish on? Where can people find you? Just go to the websites?
Yeah, just I guess like we do 2 things. So we do fitness coaching, fitness products. If you want to work with us on like nutrition training, that's propanefitness.com. If you want to learn how we do that, like the behind the scenes, or you want to build your own online fitness business, or really any other online business at this point, it's propane-business.com. We couldn't get it's a funny story why we couldn't get the full domain, but basically people selling propane gas in America wanted 30 grand for propanebusiness.com. So we put a dash in it. So it's propane-business.com for any of the business stuff.
And if one day we'll come back and you have the full Propane Business, we'll know that you're doing incredibly well. So we'll wait for that day. Oh God. Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you.
Cheers.
You've been listening to Aesthetically Trained, the podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and spread the word.